Okay, welcome to Whiteboard Wednesday number 7. Today I'm going to continue with the theme that we started with last week, which is based on this notion of high performance with high integrity. This is the very first stage of our strategy. We see it as almost the building blocks, if you like, of the very first elements of the strategic development of the organisation. And there's a number of our strategic components which come under this, which I'll go through in a moment. But what it really is it the stuff that we need to have in and around our club to get right, to give ourselves any chance of building sort of the sustainable profit model that I talked about in an earlier Whiteboard Wednesday, and that relates both to the team performance elements of it, but also clearly it relates to how we build the brand and how we create a great interaction with our people and our customers and our supporters and the people who obviously love our club. There's 7 elements which come under this notion of high performance with high integrity, and the first one I talked about last week was the heritage elements, which was the creed, if you like, of the club, and we're looking to develop and evolve that in a number of ways as we spoke about last week. And ultimately the most obvious aspect you'll see over time is what the brand itself looks like, which we're actually calling an emblem, not a brand, and being it's not the reference to the theme song, the emblem of the team we love. And we say, okay, well, tell me what the emblem actually is, and no one can be that definitive in terms of that. So we're trying to give that real context. But the 7 elements of our high performance with high integrity, as I go through them, the first one is the creed, which I talked about, which is the heritage, as we spoke about last week. The second one, which I'm going to talk about today, is the values aspect of it. A lot of talk in business these days about values and how that comes into play, and I'll put a very, very strong emphasis on it within this organisation, which I'll talk about. The third one is just strategy. We have strategy is actually a strategic unit. So these are all strategic units, but strategy in itself, how do we become great at strategy, is one of the key elements, and that'll be a subject of a future Whiteboard Wednesday. Obviously our people, what we do, and this is all very related. The 5th one is our operations, how we go about doing what we do, and operations being very, very important because you get your confidence from people having known that they can turn up for work and the things, and they got confidence in your HR systems, they got confidence in your facilities, you got confidence in your IT, all the things which create good business practice in regard to that. The 6th one is our facilities, and that's been a real challenge for our club over a period of time, and once again I'll talk about that in the future. And the 7th one is community. And people will often ask, why is community part of something like that? Isn't this a sort of something outside of, or is it just a strategy in itself? Well, what it is, the reason why community is part of it, because I see it as a critical component of the integrity of the organisation, that we need to have a great sense of our own community, the people who we employ, the players, the people who support our club, and how they feel a strong association with the club, as well as looking at it as a means and a strong means of which we develop our people as we go through. The stuff I'm going to talk about here is values. And values it's probably in management speak probably been the subject of more scrutiny and really comes under context, and we've obviously seen it even in recent times with the discussions in and around the Melbourne Storm, that it's as much as people can talk about the performance element of it, that if you're going to have high performance with high integrity, well, how do you establish the performance mentality, but also understand that you've got to operate within a value system, which in some cases is structured in and around a set of rules, such as the salary cap and those sorts of things. But in this case, I'm going to talk more about the values and the expectations of people within the organisation. The very first time I got the opportunity of meeting with our staff here, I talked about one thing in particular, and it was the simple notion that came from values was the most important thing any organisation can actually have, and that's trust, and how you actually establish trust. And trust in a football club can be quite an elusive thing. Mainly because if you have if this is the us, if you like, the Melbourne Football Club in the middle, you've got all of these external pressures, looking at means by which you can actually in some ways trying to sort of break it all down, you know, to create an environment where it becomes fragmented, mainly because a fragmented organisation is a far better story than a unified organisation, and you can see it happen all the time, and that's the noise in and around this thing which is going on, which is mainly, you know, generated by the media, as they try to extract as much information and knowledge as they can out of the organisation, and at the same time want to build some fragmentation so they've got something to write about the next day, and that's not being critical of the media. That's just actually reflecting on the fact that their job is very different to ours, and we work very closely with them to ensure that they have as good an understanding of what we're trying to do as we can. But we're pragmatic in knowing that their job is actually, in fact, a different one to what ours. So this notion of trust becomes critical. So what you need to do within any organisation is establish within this framework, if you like, the things that you put the most value on, which give you the best chance of actually establishing trust. And I'll explain trust just quickly. Trust, to me, comes into two areas, and this is not my concept. This is a book that I read some time ago, and you can tell it's a well-thumbed book. It's probably about half an inch thicker than what it actually was when I bought it, because I've read it that often. And it's by a fellow by the name of Stephen Covey, who's actually the son of the Stephen Covey's into Seven Everythings, which I don't like that much, to be honest. But I really enjoyed this book, and it's interesting. It's called The Speed of Trust, knowing that trusting organisations are far more nimble and they're far quicker. They're good on their feet, but they also, you know, in the end, you know, they make less mistakes as well. But he breaks trust into two different components. The first one he talks about is the character of the individual in regard to what they actually do, and coming under that are two particular elements. The first one being the intent of what the person is, and the integrity. And they're obviously very much related. The integrity is obviously honesty, being the first component of what we're actually talking about. But also we expect and we assume sort of honesty in our people. As a starting point, it's a hygiene factor. You try not to employ dishonest people. So honesty is a key component of integrity. But it's also people who are prepared to walk the talk. There's a lot of people who will say, yeah, they're fundamentally honest, but they have a much higher expectations of honesty external to the organisation than they actually do, you know, of themselves. And so we really focus on that very much. And the other one is intent, you know, and footy clubs, you can actually, you know, find yourself without knowing it attracting people to your organisation who aren't necessarily here for the reasons that you want them to be here. They get caught up in the excitement and the glamour and all those sorts of things. But when it comes to the crunch, working in and around a footy club is seriously hard work. So you want to make sure that people's intent by coming in and around the organisation is what it is. So the first layer of it is the character. It's going to be a very messy whiteboard, this one, Ryan, today. The second component of it is then the competence. You know, you can have people who you totally trust as for the reasons they're being here and they're fundamental person, but if they haven't got the capacity to in fact do the job and do the job well, that then becomes a major issue for you.